Well, I think it's really easy to let certain things go to your head and affect your ego. I think we all have an ego to some degree. I know that I do. Um, I like to say it's confidence more than an ego thing. I think I'm pretty comfortable with what I can offer. But I have always told my students that ability is a must, but attitude is number one. So to get the job, you have to have a certain skill set, but that doesn't mean much if you're impossible to deal with. So
Yeah.
you got to have a great, great attitude. So that would be my advice.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters in That podcast. I'm your host, Brian, and joining me today is a special guest, Fred Fischer. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. How are you?
Not too bad. Where are you hailing from?
I am in Boise, Idaho.
Born and raised?
Yes.
Raised.
Well, I was born about 30 minutes kind of southwest of Boise in a little town called Caldwell. But, you know, all these cities kind of have grown over the years, and it's just one huge mess.
To say the least, yeah.
Mess.
It's all these individual suburbs and stuff like that. But speaking of Boise, I think the biggest thing I know about Boise, Idaho is because of the bluegrass turf field that the Boise State Broncos play on. Yeah,
that's right.
Have you ever been to one of those games?
I have been to several. In early 90s, I actually played in the Boise State marching band, so I've marched on that field a few times.
Oh, that's so sick, man. And I have to admit, I didn't know too much about Boise, but it was like way back in the day when it was like just strictly in college football too. I know the city's always been there and that sort of thing, but also I've never been to Boise too. So I remember them playing Oklahoma in one of the bowl games. I think back then it was like the Sugar Bowl or one of those two. I don't know, but
the Tostitos Bowl, I believe, is probably the one you're thinking of. Yeah.
Of course, I got to know that. But doing like the Statue of Liberty play, they play the hook and laterals and all that stuff. I mean, that was one of the more craziest games I've ever seen. So, I mean, that's awesome. Yeah. How is Boise this time of the year?
Right now, it's beautiful. It's 79 degrees outside right now. We're kind of getting a slow start to our fall. The trees are just now starting to change. But it's been shorts and t-shirt weather for sure. And, some years it could be snowing at this point. And
really?
But not this year.
You're close to the Rocky Mountains, though, right?
Very close. Yep, absolutely. Yeah,
like right in your backyard, sort of thing.
Yeah, the Rockies and the Sawtooth National Forest is really close. The Seven Devils, all of that stuff. You don't have to drive very long or far out of the city to be deep in the woods. And
go for that.
It's awesome.
They go for that spiritual or transcendental kind of experience too, though. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But first off, thank you for coming on here, buddy. And I'd like to get to know you more. But let's get to know you more as a drummer, but also as an individual too. So just kind of fill everybody in here. And just looking at the About page of your website here. Just reading the first paragraph. Fischer is an energetic and entertaining drummer whose passion is evident in his live performances. While his musical forte is in hard rock, Fred's versatility, my English is terrible, in Americana, country, funk, soul, and R&B allow him to adapt to any situation, both live or as a session musician too. So let's start off with just a simple one. How did you become the drummer you are today?
Well, I started playing when I was 10 years old and had a really enthusiastic, awesome teacher that I took lessons from for a summer. And then I got involved with, junior high and high school band, doing anything percussion related whatsoever. I was in. So I did marching band, concert band, jazz band, percussion ensemble. I played with the choir. I played with the orchestra. And my band teacher I had in high school was incredibly supportive and encouraging as well. And so he had a lot to do with my earlier years, getting all that going. And he was a guy that would look for opportunities with the students that were excelling, to do things outside of school. So one of those is playing with the local Philharmonic, I guess, version of what was available at that time. And those groups were comprised of, adults in the community, doctors and lawyers and,
whatnot,
politicians and, everybody, this culmination of things to have these big symphonic type band stuff. So I'd play timpani or snare drum or, vibraphone or marimba, whatever was needed at that time. So yeah, that was a really great start. And through my high school years too, I had other drum teachers that were super amazing people. And they were also really involved with the local music scene and playing out. And so it was like real world application type stuff. So that's how I got started. And I just ran with it.
Did you go off to college to go into music and stuff like that, or did you just kind of jump into it after high school?
I did not go to college, but as we said before about Boise State, now this is no way that this would fly, in modern day times.
After 2000, that's when they changed everything up. But in the 90s, we were able to get away with it, that sort of thing. But what happened?
Well, I knew the band director for Boise State, and I called him up and I said, I have no interest in going to school, but I would love to play in the marching band. Is that possible? He's like, well, that's a pretty unusual situation, but first of all, you'd have to come audition. So I went, and at the stadium there, underneath the stadium, they have all the rooms for equipment and that sort of thing and offices. And I went there and grabbed some sheet music and put it in front of me and put some sticks in my hand and said, play that. I looked at it for a moment and went, okay. So I played whatever was there, and he looked at the percussion director and they looked at me and they said, be at all the rehearsals and all the performances.
It was easy as that.
I wasn't even a student. Yeah. And in fact, my son is a snare drum player, and he's in the marching arts. And he called the band director, a couple of years ago and said, hey, my dad was able to do this. He's like, no, there's no way that's going to happen. So he had to sign up for one class. Yeah, exactly. And so we took that one class to be involved. But it was during the whole COVID thing, and his experience was not the greatest because they just didn't get to do anything. So
yeah, I can imagine too, especially, well, the same could be said for like a lot of people in terms of COVID, not being able to do a whole lot of anything too.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll talk about COVID in just a moment, but all right. So this is after band practice and everything, and still looking at your website here. It looks like you jumped around as a drummer for hire, and it looks like you also do teaching and stuff like that. I guess, how'd you get into those kind of roles right there?
Well, I got involved with teaching when I was a senior in high school. I had been taking lessons at our local music store, and then those drum teachers had moved on and they didn't have anybody. And I walked in the door one day because that was the place where me and my friends always hung out. We just wandered the store looking at everything. I mean, we had seen everything a million times, but we just enjoyed being in that environment. But the store owner came up to me and he said, hey, there's our new drum teacher. And I was looking around like, I don't have any credentials for that. And he said, look, just teach beginner drum lessons. Just show them what you know. And so over the years, I have always kind of been teaching a little bit on the side. And then in the last couple of years, it became my full-time job that I teach. So I have 42 students right now that I teach every week, Monday through Thursday. And in here in my room is also a recording studio. So I offer recording drum tracks for people. And I have band rehearsals in here. I still play with a couple different groups that perform regularly. And just that drummer for hire thing. I'm really kind of modeling the Kenny Aronoff career.
I see, yeah.
So yeah, he's a huge inspiration to me, and a really great role model, I think, as far as having a music career and following that. So
I had to admit, when I was thinking of a taxi driver, when you think like, you look like this way and be like, you talking to me? That sort of thing. The big line right there with Robert De Niro in it too. It's like, well, I'm the only one here. That sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When you're 17 years old and the owner of a music store is saying, "There's our new drum teacher," you're kind of like, wait a second. What are you talking about? So yeah, that was it was a pretty cool game-changing moment, and it was cool that they thought highly enough of me to want to, promote me as a teacher in their store. So that was really cool.
Yeah, and you also keep yourself pretty busy too, because it looks like you've jumped around with a good couple of bands. Midline was the group?
Yep, and that band is still going. It's been going since 1990. I've been in the band for 26 years, I think. In the late 90s through about 2010, we had a record label and that we were on, and we were touring a lot with bands like Saliva and Breaking Benjamin and things like that. And Breaking Benjamin was pretty new then too, and really the only difference was their motorhome was a little nicer than the one we had.
They had all the cool things and we couldn't afford the nice things, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
I was like, this is why we can't have nice things. That's sort of, probably that guy saying, yeah.
They had a nicer sleeping bag than what we had, but yeah, they were still moving all their own gear, and I think they had maybe one tech that maybe was their front of house guy, and that guy was super busy. But yeah, so we're still writing and recording music. We haven't been really that busy since that terrible C word came into our lives. But I also play with a country artist, Cliff Miller, and that I've been playing super, super busy with. So I think we've done like 83 shows so far this year.
That's pretty sweet, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you start playing shows like last year, or is this just been something that's going just this year?
Actually, with the shutdown, we never stopped playing because there is a lot of rural communities that are really easy to get to, within an hour to 4 hours drive from here. And they didn't have the restrictions like you did in the bigger cities. Mm. And so we just quietly continued working.
Just tiptoe right to the bar right there and just start jamming everything.
There's the power of public opinion. So we were really careful about telling people like, hey, we're going to be over here, because, you didn't want a huge gathering of people, because, depending on who you talk to would be, how freaked out they were by it. So we quietly continued to make a living.
That's pretty sweet. Did you guys ever do like the live streams? I think some bands actually started doing that.
We did. Yeah. For months we did a live thing from this room. And then I think when everything was really intense, we did a couple things that were, everybody was from their own home studio, live streaming stuff. But yeah, it affected us, but it didn't shut us down. So
couldn't really get into it because there's no fans shouting in front of you and that sort of thing, trying to reach for the car play, and it's like the girls are freaking out and everything.
Yeah. And, a lot of bands did do that. I watched Seven Dust do a live concert thing, and I just sat in my living room on the big screen with the sound up and some popcorn. It was awesome.
Seeing everything, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Metallica did something like that, but it was like all these screens in and around. I think people were like FaceTiming into it so they could like see the whole show. I think that's what that... Oh, fuck, what was it? I think Salesforce. I think it was called Salesforce. That's what the commercials have been that I've been seeing recently. That's kind of like what they did to so-called adapt to the C word. Well, we should say the other C word, because there's plenty of bad C words out there too.
Yeah.
We're talking
the
about
popular one at this time. Yeah.
Yes, the most known C word at this time. That sort of thing. So, I guess
definitely.
Talk about your studio right there, and then we'll get into your kit. I guess when did you build that studio?
I built this studio 9-10 years ago, approximately. It started off as just a place that I could be at home and practice and not bother the family. And then I started having band rehearsals in here. And then this room is not really that big. And so we switched from live amps to all in-ear monitoring. And then that evolved, and I started teaching in here. So when I'm teaching in here, I have 2 other drum kits set up. makes it even smaller. But, I've got students ranging from the ages of 4 years old to 72, and depending on where they are, will determine on which drum kit they're sitting on. And then this window that you see right there, that's another room I built. That's the control room for the studio. And so I do all my drum videos in here and session work in here. And what else do we do in here? We do a lot of stuff in here, Brian. And my wife is the engineer, so she's usually on the other side of the glass, either going like this or going, yeah, we got it.
We got it. That sort of thing. You just see look, you just see this and be like, oh shit, that sort of thing.
Or sometimes I'll finish a take and I'll look over and I still hear and she's staring at her phone.
She didn't even record it.
Like, hey, we're done. You can hit stop now.
Yes. Oh no. Or she probably forgot to record it too. You think like, no, that was a good take.
Oh no, that hasn't happened. But we've had cameras not working.
Oh no.
Like, oh, that was the one, and now it's not. Now we got to do it over again. But
oh man.
Yeah. So this operates under a couple different names. One is the Fredrock School of Drumming, and the other is FM Studios because my wife's name is Mary, so Fred and Mary. A little play on words there, but so that's what's happening in here.
I was thinking like Fred Flintstone, to be honest, because I thought maybe that would be something to do right there. I don't know.
That's kind of the Fredrock part of that whole thing,
Yabba dabba doo. That sort of thing. Did you ever do that?
No, but everybody has done it for me.
Okay, fair enough. I guess, have you ever watched the Flintstones?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, for sure.
Oh, I miss that show so much. I miss a lot of the Hanna-Barbera ones. Yeah.
When people ask me what my name is, I'll simply say it's Fred, and they look at me like, "Did he just say Fred?" And so they think that I said Jeff or Brad.
Brad?
And I'm like, no, Fred, like Fred Flintstone. Oh, okay. So there you go.
There's Fredrock, and then we'll probably throw in like a Jetsons kind of theme right there too.
Yeah, exactly.
Mary,
exactly.
His wife. And she takes all your money away and goes off to the shopping mall.
Yep, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Is that all in the basement right there? Is that the man cave?
Nope, this is actually I just about took all the real estate up in my garage to build all of this. So we don't park in here. It's only a garage
ban
under its cloak of being a house. But yeah, everything in here is a studio. Yeah, outside of that door is a waiting room, and I've got drum pads set up and a bench and things for students to sit and wait. And sometimes we track out in that waiting room too. We have a big digital piano that we use. Guitar storage. Then there's a hallway that runs along here with cabinets, and then I've got like memorabilia from different bands and my stuff I've done on the walls. And then back over here is another like hospitality area with a fridge and snacks and coffee and things like that. So
beer.
Yeah.
I was say you got beer?
Only when we're by ourselves.
Well, I think you were quite saying that we do other things in here too. So I'm trying to think.
Some of my older students want to know where the alcohol is.
They're at that age of like 16 when they want to start drinking that sort of thing too, and be like, "You got 5 more years. You gotta wait till you're 21." Yeah.
We don't even discuss that at all. I try to be really, really careful about being age appropriate with my students, but yeah, it's not unusual to have rehearsal here with the guys and have a couple cold ones going at the same time.
I see.
So yeah.
All right. So let's jump into the kit right there. I guess this is the current one you've been rolling?
This is a DW collector's kit. Can you see that okay?
That's perfect, yeah.
Yeah. And it is from 2004, and I special ordered that from DW. So it's a birch kit. The shells are really, really thin. The toms are all 3-ply shells, and the kick drum is 5. But going around, I've got a 8-inch rack tom, then I've got an 8-inch piccolo tom, and then a 10, 12, 14, 16 floor, 22 kick. My snare drums revolve depending on what I'm playing right now. I've got a Ludwig Superphonic back there, but I also have a DW Performance maple snare. I've got a Tama 20-ply birch snare. That thing is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I've got a Tama brass snare that sounds amazing, and then I've got a Pearl Morgan Rose signature snare, and it sounds great as well. Cymbals, I have an endorsement with Soultone Cymbals. I've been with them for 6 years. All the rack is Gibraltar. DW pedals, DW hi-hat, the 5000 series. Let's see, what else do I got over here? Audix microphones.
Dude.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what's that instrument next to the hi-hat, kind of low hanging on the side there?
That's a piccolo tom.
Piccolo tom. Okay.
If you can, yep, it's all chrome with a black rim. On my old kit, I used to have a 6-inch rototom in that spot, and it's pitched up really, really high. It's really kind of ugly and obtrusive sounding, but it has its place at times. Yeah. And of course, the cowbell. And then for recording, I have Audix microphones on the toms, D2s and D4, D6 in the kick, SM57s on the snare, a really nice Audix condenser mic on the hi-hat, and then a stereo match pair of Lewitt condenser mics for my overheads. I also have a 57 on the ride, and then I have a I'm not sure what brand it is. It's called an MXL vocal mic that I use for the room. It's right here. Hello, Ryan.
Yeah.
It sits kind of right here in this little V-shaped part of the room, and we found that to be like the magic spot for having a room mic with the drums. So,
is that like tucked in the corner right there so it picks up everything, or is it like in a certain...
It sits about a foot away from the wall, and I have some sound baffles kind of surrounding it. It's kind of a dead corner, but we get a really nice clean sound right there. So
I was just looking at that microphone too, and normally I laugh when I see certain microphones because it looks like it could be like fit into like a movie. Like that one could be used on the Starship Enterprise or the Death Star. It's like we make public announcements on it. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's it's not an expensive mic. I think it's 200, maybe a little more than that. But it picks up the room great, so we use it. And we experimented with some other stuff, and we thought, there's the magic one for this room. So, but this room was all. I've had some professional sound engineers come over when I was first building it, and everything's really intentional with where the sound baffles are. On the ceiling, it's almost impossible to see because everything's black in here, but I have those above my overhead mics, so the sound doesn't reflect off the ceiling back into the microphones. So it just goes up and stops. And then this is bent wood around the window, and you're just deflecting the sound, trying to stop the sound waves from repeating too many times. So
I was either going to say that. I was either going to say that, or it was going to be like those pushy walls you kind of, or how to say it? Those mat kind of walls that you're able to like bounce off of, like in a wrestling room and stuff like that. That was my next
like
guess.
A rubber room.
Rubber room, yeah.
Yeah, the wall behind me, I have 3 sheets of 5/8 sheetrock on that wall to help deaden that sound escaping. That's the exterior wall. And then I have what's called sound control insulation, which is basically shredded denim. And then I have that covered with black moving blankets, and then that heavy curtain in front of it. That wall is super dead. If you go up and try to speak into it, your voice it's really odd sounding. But
screaming at a wall. That's our thing.
Exactly. Yeah, but this room sounds fantastic. It sounds fantastic.
I can picture that as the thumbnail. I think there is a song called "Screaming at a Wall," and I forget who plays it. I think it was one of those punk rock groups. Just use that if I'm there. Just be like that sort of thing, and they'll be like screaming at a wall. Just absorbs us out, that sort of thing. So
exactly, yeah, all right. Yeah.
I guess so. What other projects are you involved in outside of midline teaching as well as session drumming?
Sometimes I will go to some of the area schools and do clinics. I've done a couple master classes at Idaho Fine Arts Academy, which is a school that's dedicated to the arts, so music and dance and that kind of thing. So I've done a couple master classes there. I've done some other stuff at some of the charter schools. I've been a guest music teacher at some of those schools, and some speaking engagements too on, staying positive and chasing your dreams and those kind of things. As of late, I've been getting phone calls and also other meetings locally, like on the success of building a teaching studio. And I don't know if you know who Matt Starr is or not, but he's the drummer for Ace Frehley and Mr. Big. And I've been friends with him for about 10 years. And that's about when he started his career coaching stuff. And so I've followed Matt's advice to the letter on growing my music career. And he has some of his coaching clients who are trying to make a living at teaching drum lessons. And so he's like, you need to talk to Fred. So he's passed their information on to me. And there's a few of them scattered around the states that I've talked to as a result of him saying, well, this is working for Fred, so you should probably talk to him about that stuff. So other than music, I don't do much of anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you already keep yourself pretty busy enough as it is. I imagine it's tough trying to even just do like YouTube and stuff like that, or even anything on social media.
Yeah, well, if you wanted to talk about my YouTube channel, of course I have the drum covers. But as I go into next year, I'm going to be doing not only the drum covers but product reviews. I'm endorsed by Vader drumsticks, so that was, I guess, one thing I forgot. Oh yeah. I use the 5B sticks, and if you see that, it's got my name and my logo printed on there. This is not a signature stick, but it's a stick with my signature.
I was gonna say they got your John Hancock on it, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so Vader has sent me some products to do reviews on, and then they'll put it on their website, and of course I'll use it as well. I'm a big fan of Aquarian Drumheads. I do not have an endorsement with them, but I'm going to be doing product reviews on some of their drumheads too. Just all the equipment I use, and I figure I have a pretty decent amount of experience. I don't know everything, but tips and tricks, that might save some people some headache. And if somebody doesn't like it, then that's okay too. Yeah. I just want to share knowledge of stuff that I use and what I do that's worked for me. So,
absolutely. Yeah. That's good to hear. And do you play with any other drumsticks, or are you just strictly Vader? Have you experimented with any other sticks?
Well, in my earlier drumming days, I tried different drumsticks. I used ProMark a lot. But there was a stick called the K7000. And I loved those sticks. And at that time, I was playing the 2B size. And they were really popular, at least in our area. And I found out later that Vader had made those. They were my favorite stick. I didn't know that they were Vader used to make just about everybody's sticks until Vic Firth broke off and started making their own and such. But like I said, I used ProMark for a long time until about 1999 or 2000. Guitar Center was out of the stick I used, and the only thing that was available was the Vader sticks. And so I tried them, and I never looked back. So I've been using Vader sticks for 20 plus years, and I've had an endorsement with them for the last 4. And it took me about 4 years prior to that to be accepted into the family.
Be baptized, I guess, or something like that. I guess well, maybe not baptized, but like be accepted into the community or something like that. Yeah.
Well, the one thing that I think drummers and musicians kind of don't understand necessarily is how endorsements work. some people just assume you get the product for free, and that's not. I mean, maybe if you're Chad Smith, you know, you might get some sticks, but you know, I do get a sizable discount on my equipment with the endorsements I have, but it's also a relationship, and of course they want to see their product being proudly displayed and used and being promoted. So if you're not going to promote product, you're probably not going to get an endorsement, you know, and you have to have some kind of frequency of live shows that you play or teaching, or, you know, your social media presence and those kind of things are all factors now in that. So, but yeah, I mean, I've tried other drumsticks along the way. It just, when I switched to Vader, that was it. So.
Darth Vader or something like that. Yeah, no, it's when
yeah, there's always somebody that says that too, but it's Vater. So, which I believe, if I am not mistaken, is German for father.
I was trying to remember, because I did take German for a little bit. I was just trying to remember. Shit, actually, man, my German's loose. I lost my German. That's the thing. I think you're all right though, but close enough.
Yeah,
I imagine they butchered it somehow, because I know when it comes to the American sense, they don't follow like in this case, the rules in terms of like how symbols and everything else kind of work when it comes to the German alphabet.
Oh, yeah.
That sort of thing. So
absolutely, yeah, we've Americanized those words, so
just like we Americanized Chinese food, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Are you endorsed by anybody else outside of Vader? And I know you mentioned the symbols. I missed the name earlier.
Soul Tone.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I do have some lines on some other stuff, you know, that I'm working on, but hasn't come to fruition yet. So once that happens, then of course I'll be wearing the T-shirt or something, you know. But yeah, I'm really loyal to the brands I like, and you know, with drum heads, I've used Attack, I've used Evans, I've used Aquarian, Remo. I just keep coming back to Aquarian drum heads, and they seem to really work great for this kit. And I also have another DW kit that I use playing with Cliff Miller, and it has Aquarian heads on it too, and they're just amazing drum heads. So there's a lot of great product out there, but that's what I like.
Whatever floats your boat, as the saying goes, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think if it works for you, then that's awesome.
Sorry, I was going to jump ahead to Cliff Miller, but
go ahead.
I guess, how did you two meet, and I guess what sort of projects do you guys work on?
So Cliff and I became friends a long time ago. He had another rock band in town called Abrupt Edge, and we would do shows with them, Midline Wood, and so I got to know him really well. And then I had started another band for a while called Cure for the Fall, and we needed a singer. And so I kept messaging Cliff, because he's just got this amazing voice, and he's an amazing songwriter and great guitarist too. And I kept twisting his arm till he finally gave in, and we had that band going for probably 7 years or so. And then he broke off and started this country band under his own name, and he had different versions of people in the band, and not really a steady lineup. And the bass player and I had been playing in another group together, this funk soul R&B stuff, and we were no longer involved with that band. And Cliff said, "Hey, if you guys aren't doing that, you want to come do this?" And so we gladly went along and learned to love country music.
That's right, because you were always more into the hard rock, that sort of thing. Was it kind of hard into
absolutely.
Country?
Yeah. And so there was, a little bit of a learning curve, and because that gets played a little bit different than just framing a house, so to speak. So, but Cliff is an incredible songwriter. His original music is really cool. And so when we play these shows, we do a lot of original showcase type shows, but we also do some of these cover band shows, but half the list is original material anyway. So it's super sweet to be involved with playing that. So
yeah, country.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Sorry, I was jumping ahead there. I didn't know you were finished there.
Oh, that's okay.
No. But country, I know it tends to be, I don't want to say depressing, but it's more like it's always that lost love kind of song or drunken sailor sort of thing or something like that. And
yeah, so I guess I should specify like this is more like Americana type country. If anybody's out there familiar with like Reckless Kelly, Turnpike Troubadours, bands like that, that's really the vein that Cliff is in more than like your Keith Urbans and or anything that leans towards. Well, Dave Matthews isn't really country though, is he? Or is he doing that now? I don't know.
I mean, it was just a guess, really. That was my first guess. Normally, when you hear somebody do a name like that, Dave Matthews Band, stuff like that, you think country, and then just listen to it, and you make the interpretation in. But I could be wrong. But I'm sorry. Keep going.
Well, it's not the bro country stuff, where you're talking about your tractor and your truck and those. I actually heard a song on the radio the other day where one of the lines was like "chew tobacco, spit." And I drink coffee nonstop, and I think I was drinking coffee, and I actually spit it all over the dash of my truck because it was the comedy of it was just too much to take. So Cliff's music is nothing like that whatsoever. It's really great personal storytelling type songs, and it's nothing about the girl in the truck and the tobacco.
And most likely the beer. That'd be the next thing.
Oh
too.
Yeah. There's none of that's happening in these songs. So it's not embarrassing to be associated with it whatsoever. It's like I can tell anybody about this music and they go, "Oh, that's really, really great." Not somebody like snickering in the back, like, "Oh, can you believe the lyrics of this song?"
They do it behind your back. That's the thing, though. They'll probably be like, "Oh my gosh, this guy does this music. Oh man, he's such a loser, that man." I mean,
well, the bass player and I are definitely known for being in the hard rock metal scene. And so when people find out that we're playing this, they're like, "What? Are you kidding me?" And then when they actually listen to it, they're like, "Oh, that's actually really well put together, well written songs." And I mean, even if stylistically they didn't like it, I mean, a nice painting's a nice painting, right?
Absolutely too. And I think storytelling is like the best thing you can do in like music wise. Most of the time, I think people are like trying to get like a message through when it comes to any sort of music. I know like one of the punk rock groups, Bush, that I used to listen to way back in the day. It was like lyrics didn't make much sense, and it was just like it was mainly just the music meant to drive you, and we just threw in lyrics just to, like give it something, that sort of thing. So that's why I applaud musicians who really put in the lyric material. Yeah.
Well, he's from a small hometown just north of Boise, like kind of a more rural farmer type community. And he has a lot of material available to him, revolving around that lifestyle. So
yeah, farm boy, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool stuff.
That's pretty cool. It's good to see you guys definitely write a good amount of material too.
Yeah.
I guess looking at more of what your About page says here, it looks like you guys also did some work with Gotham Records, Time Warner Distribution, and even ESPN. I guess, how'd you get involved with those guys?
Well, Midline had a record deal, and we were signed with Gotham Records, which was a small independent record label. But our distribution was with Warner Brothers, so that's Time Warner distribution. So our album was available in any music store anywhere. And then we were also sponsored by Jägermeister, so we would get on these Jägermeister music tours, and that was part of when we were out with Breaking Benjamin and Saliva and those kind of groups. Gotham Records did end up folding, so that kind of ended that part of it. But we continued on our own, releasing our music. But while we were with Gotham Records, we had 4 of our songs were licensed to ESPN, and they had this some kind of television sports show called The Re-Evolution of Sports. And I never saw any of the episodes myself, but I would have people call me like, "I'm watching some wakeboarding video and I could hear your song in the background." I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. We made this much money though from it. It went to the record label.
Of course, they take all the money and don't pay the musicians.
Yeah. But you got to watch your back. Make sure you take care of business for sure. For sure. We were a little younger then, and we trusted everybody. And it's unfortunate when you can't trust your business dealings, but yeah. So it did great for the band as far as like some notoriety and some people recognizing what was happening, but all that money went to the record label for sure.
Yeah, that's why we read the fine print before we sign our name to it.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the problem is we hit so much, like just scroll down and just hit accept when it comes to like the updates. So we're assuming like, oh, this is just kind of the same thing. We're just going to sign it and we'll get this amount eventually. And
exactly.
That's what they hope. That's what they hope for you to do. That sort of thing.
Well, and it gets ugly at the end of things like that because you're dealing with lawyers and just going blind looking at the language of contracts and things. It's like, oh man, I need an interpreter for the interpreter. It's silly, but
it's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. Looks like you joined a Los Angeles studio band, X Drive. Talk about those guys a little bit.
Oh yeah. So X Drive, I got involved with that project. The guitar player who was in charge of the whole thing had seen me play live with Midline and had asked me if I was available to do session work. And so that process was kind of a long thing, but I ended up recording some drum tracks for him here locally. And then he took it he actually moved to LA and got some other people involved. And it was Andy Johns. And if anybody knows Andy Johns, he and his brother Glenn Johns, I think they recorded most of all the Led Zeppelin stuff. So I got Andy involved. And then Keith St. John sang on it. And Keith has a band called Burning Rain. And that's how I got to know Matt Starr, because Matt Starr was the drummer for Burning Rain at that time. And Keith had also sang with Montrose and with Lynch Mob and some of these other bands, and fantastic singer and performer. And then James Lomenzo on bass, who had first been making it with White Lion, the 80s band, and then he was the bass player in David Lee Roth's band, and then he played with Black Label Society, and he's been out on the road with John Fogerty, and then lately with Megadeth. So, some pretty good names of people there. And so anyway, the guitar player was down there working on this, and he ended up getting a record deal with Frontiers Records. And so he needed to finish this album. So he flew me to LA, and I recorded another 4 or 5 songs down there. And then we also shot a music video for one of the songs. So if you go to X Drive on YouTube, you can find X Drive and the song California, and there I am performing with Keith and James. And there's also this electronic press kit that's available on there, and we all talk about Andy Johns a little bit on that. Andy unfortunately had some medical issues come up and had passed away before the album was finished. And that was kind of a bummer deal, but at least I got to work with him a little bit and get to talk with him, and he was extremely nice, which was super cool coming from this guy that recorded John Bonham. So it was a little surreal, but when you find yourself in that moment, you just offer what you know how to do and try not to get freaked out by this guy knows that guy and whatever, I'm there to just provide what I can do. And it was awesome. But Wynn Davis, producer, engineer, mixing genius, Wynn Davis finished that record, and it got released on Frontiers Records. And yeah, it was really cool.
I was just picturing, like, as soon as you met that guy, you'd be like, that's the guy. That's the guy.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
You did. You're Corey John Bonham.
We're not worthy.
Yes. You're not worthy. That sort of thing. That's always an Alice Cooper reference. I don't think anybody else uses it outside of, like, Alice Cooper, that sort of thing. So,
well, you got to watch Wayne's World. It's like people knowing lines from Wayne's World or from Spinal Tap.
Yeah, I think I only seen like that part. I don't know if I watched the whole movie with Wayne's World though, but I do remember it was like Alice Cooper just came in, and I think they didn't know who he was. And then, like, when the realization started coming to them, they're like, "We're not worthy. We're not worthy." That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I gotta love Michael Myers and those guys. So, and
well, after that had been released and came out, the guitar player had written another 18 songs, and so I went back to LA and recorded those songs in 2 days. And that time was with engineer-producer Chris Collier. And Chris Collier has had a lot of success recently. He did all the KXM records that has Doug Pinnick and Ray Luzier and George Lynch. And he's done, I think he did the last Korn record and the last Whitesnake record. And yeah, he's gotten in some great circles, but he was awesome to work with too. And he's also a drummer. So, I'd be tracking and I'd have the headphones on and he'd say, "Okay, here comes the chorus," he'd kind of give me, because I'm learning these songs and recording them on the fly. So he was an excellent guide and a great guy to bounce ideas off of and play. And so, yeah, that whole experience was amazing.
I see. And I don't want to apologize for your loss too. That must have been pretty hard at the time. And this probably was a different person too, because I know you did mention a bunch of names, but when you get into the studio, I guess what sort of advice could you give to drummers when it comes to like doing it to a click or a metronome or anything else, really?
Don't wait till you're in the studio to learn to play with the metronome. Don't do that. I made that mistake once. I was down in LA recording and I thought, I could play to the click. I thought, well, I have pretty good timing as it is, which I did. But, oh, man, as soon as I had to start playing, I kind of felt like I had my pants around my ankles. I was like, I really, really struggled. So that guy had told me, he's like, learn to play with the click because you want to be a drummer that can make a lot of money, not just be a drummer. So I started learning to play with the click. So if you're going to be a studio session guy, you got to learn to play to the click and make it feel good too. It's just not like just you still got to play to the click and be relaxed and smooth and make it feel good. That's the trick. The other thing is some people kind of get in their head, even though they're well rehearsed with the click, like, I'm in the studio and this is going to be forever. And they kind of tense up and they don't perform very well. For me, I'm just performing the song again, and if it's getting recorded and it's going to sound good, and I'll go in and listen, not just here, but any other studio I've been in, and listen back and go like, I could probably do that better, and I'll go do another take. But usually 2 to 3 takes and I'm done.
I would say it also comes with the experience too, because obviously when you're...
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Obviously when you're first just coming in there and you're the noob of the whole thing, it's like, okay, I really got to make sure you're kind of tense and everything too, and you want to make sure I want to make sure I do this right. And I think the hard hitting, as you were saying, that comes later once you know how the song goes and everything too. So
yeah,
I'd say, that's the best advice you could give to some other people.
Well, what kind of put things in motion again with me was going back to the music store I went to when I was a kid. And that same owner of the store that said, "There's our new drum teacher." They had a studio upstairs in that music store, and whatever little band I had in high school at that time, we had booked studio time, and we were all so excited about we're going to make a record in one night, we're going to be rock stars by tomorrow.
Nope.
But no, I was in the studio or in the store earlier that day, and I was kind of nervous, and I was all amped up, and just kind of bouncing off the walls, and I was. He's like, "What's going on with you?" And I said, "We're going to record in the studio tonight, and I'm really nervous about it." And he just calmly looked at me and he said, "Why are you nervous? You're just playing the drums." And I don't know why, but that flipped a switch in my brain that I went as I went to start recording. So that first experience, I just had his voice in my head over and over, like, "You're just playing the drums. Just do what you know how to do." And I thought, you're right. And that changed that whole experience for me. And so as I progressed and played with different bands and were recording, and, sometimes you feel a pressure because you're paying a studio by the hour or a day or whatever, and you don't want to be the guy in the band that's wrecking the budget,
Yeah.
You got to get in and get it done. I was usually it's the guitar player wrecking the budget because he's experimenting with sounds or whatever. Couldn't you do that 6 months ago? But I've always remembered him saying, "You're just playing the drums." And when I do that, I just go, "You're right."
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So I mean, that would be my biggest advice to anybody. You're just playing your instrument, and you're going to go play it how you know how to do it, and it's going to be great.
Well, did you mention you were also a big coffee drinker too?
I am. This is my third round today in my MTV cup.
I was just picturing, like you were saying, you were jittery early. I'm just thinking, like, if he just wants to drink a cup of coffee, then it'd be like, oh, okay, let's go, that sort of thing.
I never drank coffee until I was about 30, and because I hated the taste of it. But my wife and I went out of town to see some friends that were near playing, and we were so blasted tired with that coffee that was made in that bar was like the best coffee I've ever tried and had. And still to this day, I think about that coffee once in a while, like, oh man, that was amazing coffee. But that started my coffee addiction.
Well, I was going to think it wasn't an Irish coffee too, since you said it was in the bar. So I was kind of worried there at first.
No, it was just straight black coffee, man. Yep.
I've had bad experiences with coffee. That's why I never drink it. And you always hear about some of the bad things about it too. So it's like, I'm probably happy with what I am. I think I'll just draw the line at Coke and Mountain Dew, to be honest, and just roll with those ones, as those are the most sugary ones. I think the Mountain Dew, it kept me up last night too. So I think that's why I got to just cut that out of my life, to be honest. So
I haven't had soda in probably 5 years.
Really?
I used to drink Dr. Pepper and that kind of stuff like all the time. And one day I stopped at a convenience store and I got a 32-ounce Dr. Pepper with tons of ice, like I always like to have. And that was another moment in my life where the switch went off in my brain. I took a sip of it, and I'm driving along in my pickup truck, and I rolled the window down and I hucked the thing out of my truck.
Oh no, he lost his taste buds.
I littered.
Here comes the fine.
I haven't touched soda since.
I think it's like the taste buds. I think it like changes like every 7 years or something like that. Because I know I used to not be a fan of blue cheese, actually, and then I literally started having it the first couple of times and be like, this actually isn't bad, that sort of thing. So I know what you mean.
Oh yeah.
It's so weird. So I don't know. It's just odd, to be honest. But regardless, getting back into drumming.
Yeah.
No. I was just trying to make sure I had the question right. Electric sets. Have you ever played on them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. I play drums at different churches frequently, and some of them have digital kits. A couple of them have a really nice Roland TD20. That's pretty nice. And then like the Yamaha DTX Extreme, I think. The Yamaha drum pads, that one church has like the newest pads, and those to me feel the best. I can't remember which pad it is exactly. It kind of has this white gum rubber textured feel to it. To me, that's like the most realistic feeling drum pad I've played on versus the Roland mesh heads, which are like little mini trampolines. But for me personally, I don't use them. I'm not turning my nose up at them necessarily, but I just, for what I do, I really haven't had a use for them. And in fact, I filled in for a month of gigs with a band a couple summers ago, and the band leader was really adamant about me playing a digital kit. And so I tried to piece something together, and it really wasn't working. So I'm a big connoisseur, if you will, of Facebook Marketplace. And so I was just watching locally, and I found a pretty decent Yamaha digital kit on there for a few $100s. I bought it, played that month of shows with it, then turned around and sold it to a student. I used it for what I needed, and then it was out the door.
It just never clicked? Was that what happened?
Well, to me, this is my opinion, nothing really beats actually physically moving air. So when you hit a drum, you're moving air. You're making something happen. Now, I will say, though, that the newer generations of drum kits, and not even brand specific necessarily, but they're getting pretty convincing. Like in their sounds, their stock sounds. They've got 800 different drum kits, that have sampled sounds of being recorded in the best studios in the world, and dynamically they're getting really well put together. I think the cymbals are the biggest hang up for me. Hitting this kind of thicker, smaller round piece of
rubber,
plastic and rubber, it doesn't feel like a cymbal. It does, so for me, when I play on digital cymbals, I feel like I have to make a little adjustment in how I play a little bit. Getting cymbal swells to work right. I have to kind of navigate around that a little bit, but I think they're great for what they are. And, people who have noise concerns, that's respecting your neighbors and those who live in your household. Those are good choices. I make suggestions for digital kits all the time to students who are in situations where having an acoustic kit doesn't make sense for what they're doing. But I try to get them something that actually has what I mean?
Yeah. That was actually my asking. It's just doing it for you. It's the same way with the kick pedal too. There was like no bass drum in front of it. It's just like you just press it down. It's
was it the reverse one that it hits down like this back towards a trigger?
It was something like that.
Hitting like this, yeah.
It was something like that. I'm not too sure, but that was a kid way back then. I've been kind of rolling with a TD-25K for a good while, so I mean, and hey, I don't really have a need to change it, to be honest, because I keep my parents happy. I say, love thy neighbor, that sort of thing. That's what you want to do with the drums. So
yeah. Well, as soundproof as this room is, my nearest neighbor can kind of hear the kick drum. And that depends on how after it I'm getting, depending on how aggressive I'm playing for whatever it is I'm doing. But I try to remember oh yeah, he probably doesn't want to hear that and he's eating dinner. So, but I'm normally teaching during the day and nobody's around anyway. So, but digital kits, I prefer the physicality of a hi-hat moving. So I try to help my students steer towards getting a hi-hat that's actually moving up and down related to the pedal. I think that's better technique.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say it's also your preference, but it could be. We could also say opinion. It's probably both one and the same too. But
I think if it works for you, then that's awesome.
Absolutely. But I guess
my opinion aside. So
absolutely. Actually, I was gonna say the reason why I normally ask, and it's because if it also depends on who influenced you, like Neil Peart, for instance, because that's the first one I always bring up to mind, to be honest. But since you're saying what they call the satellites set, it was all in and around him with chimes, I guess whatever else you want to incorporate into it.
Yeah.
Was that something you would consider doing? Have the electric set be this percussion and whatever too?
Well, I do have a old Roland TD4, and as I'm looking down the road at some of these other covers I'm doing, I think I might sneak in a couple pads around, to get some certain sounds. But as far as expanding something behind me, that's at this point won't be happening. But even so, some of these bands I play with that have special effects and stuff happening or different sounds, sometimes those are embedded in a track. And so when I'm playing along, I've got my click going and the track going, and sometimes there's sequencing to video stuff that's happening and those kind of things. Again, that's why you need to play with the click. But as far as me personally incorporating digital stuff into my set, I don't really have any plans to really go after any of that, other than maybe some of these covers I'm doing where I might need some unique sounds available. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So getting into touring, I guess first off, let's jump into, in terms of the experience with touring, I guess, what's been your experiences with it?
For the most part, touring is awesome. And depending on who you're traveling with, there's that dynamic. Fortunately, I've always been, for the most part, toured with people I liked and they liked me. Because the time you spend on stage is extremely small to the amount of time you're not doing anything else. Maybe you're, driving or somebody else is driving, or, and you're stuck next to somebody else for 23 hours of the day, so you got to be able to deal with that. And, sometimes your hotel accommodations, everybody gets a room. Sometimes everybody's in one room, although I'm at the age now where that's like a no-go thing for me.
Yeah,
I don't want anybody else in bed with me unless you're my wife. But yeah, I mean, I did have an experience once where we broke down, and there was 8 of us in one hotel room while the mechanic was fixing our truck.
Oh no.
And so that happened because the sound guy, we had this big truck that we drove, and the front half of it was like a living quarters, and the back half was equipment. It was a pretty big diesel truck, and we stopped somewhere. It was like 2 a.m, and this is in Minnesota, and it's winter.
Oh no!
So I mean, all these weather concerns and driving conditions and all of that, and why the booking agent had booked us in Minnesota in the winter, I don't know. But at any rate, we were in getting some snacks, and the sound guy pulled up to fuel up the truck, and he filled up the first tank, started the truck up, drove it around, came back, filled up the second tank. Then he came in, and he looked really sick. With the information that he was about to deliver, is that he had filled up both diesel tanks with unleaded.
Oh no!
Which will ruin a diesel vehicle very fast. So we had to wait for a mechanic that we could find in the middle of the night to come and not only pump all that fuel out and discard it in whatever way they do. I don't know. The whole band and the crew, we had to share a room for a night. It was miserably cold. We were so tired. Extremely expensive.
It wasn't a cheap motel?
Yeah, it was like a Motel 6, or they used to have the slogan, "We'll leave the light on for you."
Yeah, that. Oh no.
Yeah, it was just across the street from the gas station we were at. So I think it was like $2,500 later we were able to leave.
Yep, and I guess assuming it was like 8 hours later, assuming this was like in the middle of the night or early morning when you guys got up and left.
Oh yeah, it was, and of course that made us really push for time to the next show, because we had a severe delay.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Needless to say, that guy got fired. That sort of thing.
But I mean, touring's awesome, but sometimes there are mechanical things that happen with whatever rig you're touring in. Lots of flat tires I've dealt with, those kind of things. But wherever, especially with Midline, wherever we were on tour, everybody in the band enjoyed like trying to go and do something. We just didn't sit in hotel rooms, and we liked to just go see what there was to see. It was always an adventure. So it was always awesome. Yeah,
well, I could definitely say that was your worst memory when it came to touring. So I guess.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it's a worst memory, but it wasn't funny at the time. Everybody was like, we wanted to kill the sound guy. Yeah. But I mean, outside of that, it's a blast. The longest I've been gone from home on a tour was 7 months, and the longest I've been gone away from my wife was nearly 3 months out on the road. So, I mean, she's an incredible woman to support somebody with ridiculous thoughts and dreams that I that I seem to constantly pursue. So, yeah.
And I guess also kids.
Yep, we have 4 boys.
Congratulations. And I guess child care and everything else kind of factors into the life too, I guess.
As far as I know. Yeah.
Growing up, but at the time there was probably something else involved too, so it probably added to the stress nonetheless. So
Well, having kids, period, is an amazing thing, and a huge responsibility, And my kids are all awesome, and they're all different, but they're all involved with music too. So this house is a loud house.
I guess we still make it by, because I know you were talking about your neighbors earlier, saying like they somehow tolerate the noise, even though they can hear the foot pedal every now and again when it's pumping that bass. Like drum go boom, that sort of thing.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
I guess seeing some of the groups you played with, because you mentioned earlier with Breaking Benjamin and Saliva, it looks like you played with Motley Crue, Godsmack, Queensryche, and Volbeat. I guess which one of those groups was the best one you ever played alongside with?
Well, as far as being treated like gold, I would say Godsmack. Those guys and their crew were number one people to be around. That was an incredible experience with those guys. When we first met them, we were loading into the venue and they were doing their sound check. And when they got done, they came down and introduced themselves and hung out. And especially Shannon Larkin, the drummer, amazing guy. And he and Sully do this drum battle in their concert. And the guy that was teching for Sully is Viggy, who had been Tommy Lee's drum tech. So when we had done some shows with Motley Crue, we met Viggy and got to know him a little bit. And so then when we did the shows with Godsmack, there was Viggy. So we still got to, hang out with him a little bit. And then it wasn't long after that, we did some stuff with Seven Dust, and Viggy was teching for Morgan. So that was really awesome. But yeah, I think as far as like respect, whatever you guys need, you can have. They just really went out of their way to make us a part of the show. We've played plenty of shows where you're the inconvenience of the day and nobody wants to deal with you. And it's just like, get in, do your thing, get out, see you next time kind of a deal. That being said, Motley Crue was probably the roughest situation.
I can imagine too, given the song titles and stuff, and even I guess their history too, off the stage, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, all that being said, though, Viggy was super, super nice, and the head of security for Motley Crue, he went out of his way to kind of right some wrongs, if you will.
Define wrongs, we should probably say.
Well, I probably shouldn't get into that, but
yeah, we'll leave that for another time.
Yeah. But I know there's several hundred bands that we've done shows with that, but I would say as far as being treated really super awesome, I would say Godsmack would probably be in the number one spot. Queensryche would be right there. Seven Dust too. But I would say further on the list would be
Motley Crue.
Yeah,
I can imagine. Even though they were one of the big bands that came out of the '80s, there, and it was a shout out.
That had nothing to do with the band members themselves. It was just their people, I guess you could say.
It's different. The music doesn't really define the individual, so to speak. You have to get to know them personally, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which is what we're doing here.
Yeah, man.
So, it's absolutely I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Though. Okay. Making sure I didn't miss any questions. To talk about session musicians, I guess give advice for people who want to be teachers or their own session drummer. I guess what sort of advice could you give to them?
Well, for teaching, and somebody had asked me the same question, before I was really into teaching, because I was like, should I or not? First of all, do you love teaching? Do you want to love teaching? That's the most important question, I think, to ask yourself if you want to teach, because your knowledge of the instrument and your talent to play the instrument doesn't make you a teacher, or capable of teaching. Because every single person learns differently, and you have to have patience for some of those different people. Some people move quick, some people move slower. So you got to be patient. We're moving at their pace, not at my pace. We're moving at their pace. So with teaching, you got to have patience, and you got to really want to do that. And you have to be a businessman at the same time, or a business person. For session work, again, you got to know how to play your instrument. You got to play your instrument in time. You got to play your instrument appropriately for the song. The parts that you choose, and you got to be willing to be coachable too, especially if you're working for somebody else. Then you're the guy that's being hired to provide that, and you got to, regardless if you think it's right or wrong, I'm working for that person and they want this certain thing to happen. And so are you going to be willing to do that or not, and happily do that? But I think the number one thing besides session work or teaching or touring in a band is how well do you get along with people, because I know plenty of awesome musicians, but they're not so pleasant to be around.
Yeah, I know one that comes to mind was Randy Bly from Lamb of God. He's a little bit better nowadays, but I think like way back then he would been classified as an asshole sort of thing. Sorry, Randy, if you hear this, but I'm just kind of laying it out there for you, buddy.
Well, I think it's really easy to let certain things go to your head and affect your ego. I think we all have an ego to some degree. I know that I do. I like to say it's confidence more than an ego thing. I think I'm pretty comfortable with what I can offer. But I have always told my students that ability is a must, but attitude is number one. So to get the job, you have to have a certain skill set, but that doesn't mean much if you're impossible to deal with. So you got to have a great attitude. So that would be my advice.
I would say, yeah, definitely be human in a certain sense, which I guess involves humbleness, compassion, and understanding, so to speak.
Yeah.
I was actually really thinking about those things last night, to be honest. So that's I'd say that's a big thing, and that would also be. I'd actually say, hey, that's my pearl of wisdom. There we go. We pass it on, and I pass it on to you. So there you go.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Let's get into a couple fun questions right here. So, favorite alcohol drink and non-alcoholic beverage.
Favorite alcohol drink. Well, I do like beer.
Beer.
There's always local breweries, I think, that have stuff that they make that's unique to where a person might live. There was a brewery from California, though, and I can't for the life of me think of the name of it, but they had a beer called Taste Like Space. The smoothest, best tasting beer I've ever had in my life. And it was just like a seasonal run of it. And there was only 2 or 3 different places here locally that you could find it. And I know that when I wanted to buy like a growler of it or something, it was like $65 or $70. I'm like, I don't like it that much. Non-alcohol drinks, I drink a lot of water. Water's the lifeblood, you got to have water.
Always, yeah.
But I do like iced tea, unsweetened iced tea. That I can drink gallons of that for some reason. And then, of course, coffee.
Yeah, we've seen the coffee mug already, so we at least know that much.
And like I said earlier, I don't do the soda thing. Sometimes I'll do juice or something, but pretty rarely. But yeah, water, iced tea, coffee.
That's good choices.
Yeah.
Does Idaho have a lot of breweries in and around Boise?
They do, and it seems like there's a new one opening up all the time. It's kind of hard to keep up with those. It's a fun thing to do with your friends. Go and meet and have a couple drinks or whatever. But outside of that, I don't really just sit around drinking beer.
Yeah, I would say I've been to Kentucky too with some of the bourbon farms out there for Jim Beam. So those were actually really cool, and I guess they really have to keep those in barrels for a good amount of time. So
yeah,
I feel it's probably like 3 years or something like that, or something happens, and I forget how the process works, but I think when they get the devil's cut, the all the liquid in it comes out of the wood, and that's how they extract it and everything. That's how they make their devil's cut, which actually wasn't bad. I would say it was actually pretty good. So I would say,
yeah,
Jim Beam can't go wrong with those. So let's see. Was there ever a song that was really hard for you to play to, and you either gave up or you came back later?
Ooh, there have been some original midline stuff that was a challenge to get around. And there were some times that those were put aside and then revisited later. As far as learning cover stuff, when I first heard Seven Dust, I was touring with a band from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And so we did Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin. We did Wyoming, North and South Carolina. Somewhere along the line, Seven Dust was a new band, and that was my first time hearing the song Black. And I did devote quite a bit of the time trying to learn that song. And I didn't know who Morgan Rose was at that time. I didn't know what Morgan looked like. I just barely knew that. I think the guitar player of the band had discovered them and said, we should learn this song. So we learned that. And then when I was back home playing with Midline, I had my hair all in braids. And I'm with the rock stuff, I'm pretty animated with the flash and hard hitting and stuff like that. And I started having people say, you look and play like the guy in Seven Dust. And I was like, I don't, Seven Dust. And then when I saw Seven Dust, I was like, oh, wow. So then I shaved sense. My head. That's how you end up with the hair today? Yes.
It's like a little mohawk action going right here, that sort of thing.
Well, it depends. You might be catching me on a good day. So it's I'm getting older too, so I can't do the long hair anymore. But yeah, when I saw Morgan for the first time, I was like, yeah, this is way too similar. I'm going to be accused of being a Seven Dust ripoff.
We're copying this guy. Oh no, that sort of thing.
Yeah. No, but I mean, as far as my drumming style goes, people will lump me in that whole group of like Morgan and Shannon Larkin and Will Hunt, who plays for Evanescence now. I've had a lot of people say, like, you're kind of a culmination of those three guys. So I think that's good company to be in.
Does sound like a good company, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Every day of the week, that sort of thing. And you know what? I forgot this question too, and I was going to ask, who's your biggest influence? And I guess influences.
Neil Peart, by far. I fell in love with Rush when I was in junior high or high school. Of course, hearing Tom Sawyer for the first time, and I dove in hard. I used to have this ginormous, huge Tama drum kit, double bass. My toms were 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18 floor tom. And then I had a set of rototoms, 6, 8, and 10 under my hi-hat, a sea of cymbals. I wanted to be Neil. So I think, going back to your question about learning songs that were hard, I spent countless hours for years learning Rush songs, at least the best that I could. And some stuff, I just was like, I'll fake my way through this spot. I never had to perform them for anybody, but it was just, me in my bedroom at home. I had just imagined being on stage playing with Rush.
Yeah, Geddy Lee is in front of you, and then Alex Lyson's on the left side there.
Exactly. Yeah. It was really cool. Our bass player from Midline, he kind of lived in that sort of fantasy land too when he was younger, like imagining being on stage. And he had a band that he was in LA, because that's where he's from. They used to do this thing on the door to their rehearsal room, is every night they rehearsed, if I remember correctly, wrote something on the door like, welcome to Dallas, or welcome to Miami. So every time they had a rehearsal, they kind of were in this mindset that they were in a different city.
Mm.
And they'd write that on the door, just like, I don't know if you call that your vision board.
That's where we're going eventually. We'll get to that point eventually.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of thought that too when I was a kid. I had some desk lamps that were on some shelves behind me, and I'd put colored bulbs in them, and try to make it feel like I was on this big stage. And
I guess, do you have a better lighting right now?
Oh yeah, I got way better lighting than than what I had with desk lamps. But yeah, in here I do have a bunch of can lights that go around the room. That's the other thing with being on video and teaching, and this also is a studio that we do full production stuff for some different people that they hire FM studios to do different things. Wanted it vibey, wanted this really cool environment conducive to feeding off of that creative energy. So, yeah.
I see. And I guess, is there something you hope to achieve on social media as well? In terms of like YouTube and I guess anything else you really use?
Well, that's something that's really started to get traction this year. I didn't really utilize my YouTube account until this year. And I have a plan that Mary and I have lined out, and it evolves as stuff, unfolds before us. But I think I started with like 40 subscribers in January, and I'm almost at 350 right now. So that's just kind of organically growing. But it's a marketing tool for teaching and for session work and for, drummer for hire. In fact, excuse me, a guitarist that lives in New Orleans reached out to me recently, who has a new band that's going to appear on the scene starting this next year. Pretty metal type stuff. I've talked to him on the phone a handful of times about maybe going and touring with them. So I can't really say much more than that, other than they have a management marketing team ready to go. So they have big plans. So I'm learning some songs.
We're working that way, yeah.
But I mean, that's a result of people taking notice from that. So I'm just going to keep devoting more time doing some covers every week, and then the product review stuff will be coming out starting in January, and tips and tricks and those kind of things. So
that should really help. Yeah. The other thing I was going to recommend, have you ever thought about doing live streams, just doing drum covers of whatever songs you wanted to do?
I haven't thought of that, but I am looking really seriously and trying to figure out the logistics of it, but doing some online lesson stuff. Mm. And there's a drummer, Peter Magadini, who I became friends with about 2 years ago, and he, in this last January, moved to Boise from Chicago. Now, Peter is a world-renowned drummer. He played drums for Diana Ross and several other outstanding artists. He's, I think, on the board of directors for Modern Drummer magazine, and he's a teacher. And one of his students, some of you might know, is Mike Johnston, who does the Mike Johnston's Lessons Online thing. So I've had some discussions with Peter on doing some stuff. Not that I want to compete with Mike Johnston necessarily. I think I have a different path in mind for playing music. But I think there's some opportunity there that we're kind of outlining to see what will happen. So that maybe some live lesson stuff on YouTube would be the way to get started with that. So
that'd be one. I was also thinking of a drum battle or something like that. Live stream drum battle. Fredrock versus Mark Johnson. Or you said Mike Johnson? I'm sorry.
Mike Johnson, yeah.
Mike Johnson,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He'd probably kick my butt, but he's pretty fantastic. I know a handful of friends that have gone and done his camps. He has these camps that he does during the summer, and I don't know. I think they last about a week or something, and there's 10 to 15 people that spend every day, all day long, kind of going through these lesson stuff with him, and it's pretty amazing. So, yeah, I think as far as live streaming stuff like that, I might do some. And I have some of my students going, man, if you had some videos of you doing this so I could watch that throughout the week to work on my lesson. So, yeah, there's all this stuff that's in development, Brian.
A lot of videos that we have to crank out pretty soon here, starting next year. Yeah. That's our New Year's resolution.
I'm going to overwhelm my my producer engineer in there who does all of that. You know, my drum video, she does all the editing and recording and mixing, and she's got a lot of weight on her shoulders too.
I could say, yeah, but we'll reward her afterwards.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Good woman though. You picked a good woman too. So congratulations there.
Yeah. Thank you. Yep.
No worries. And last fun question, and I had to seriously ask: have you used that cowbell to play "Don't Fear the Reaper" by Blue Oyster Cult?
Nope.
No. It does. I mean, anytime you think of cowbell, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. At least.
Well,
I don't know about
thank
everybody
you,
else.
Saturday Night Live, for that. Yeah. Funny you should ask, because I do have a guitar player friend who has requested to do a collaboration video of "Don't Fear the Reaper," but I think he's written it in more of a heavy rock metal type feel.
Style. Yeah, style.
But it will still have the cowbell.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see if we make that happen or not. So
was he gonna do the Will Ferrell and start dancing all over the place, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Well, I have done that in the privacy of my own living room, but
after a little one too many.
No, I mean just being silly.
We're still a kid at heart. Yeah. Truth be told, I'm not a fan of the cowbell. I have one out of necessity. I used to ask people, have you ever heard the sound of perfect pitch? And they say no. And I said, well, it's the sound of a cowbell hitting a dumpster. Okay. Fair enough.
That's my feeling on the cowbell.
Okay. Every now and again, it's at least something fun to do, because I know one of our drummers in our community, Mike Conway, he did Hair of the Dog by Nazareth. I think he has an electric set too, but it actually looks pretty killer too, because it looks like long silver cylinder kind of thing with black mesh tops on top of them. So it's really cool too, but he was using one pad as the cowbell, and then he was also making sure to also hit the hi-hat and everything else. It was making sure, oops, and I hit the mic. That's probably part of it. But he was keeping it with hitting the cowbell. I always do this once. I always hit my microphone at least once, that sort of thing. But
just keep it real.
Yeah. But yeah, it was actually really cool too. So anytime I think of that, I always like to ask if that's the first thing you do or if you played it with any other songs. So you get the idea. So
it snuck in there a few times. I did Monkey Business from Skid Row, which has cowbell in it. I recently did Cupid's Dead from Extreme, and there's a short part of that song that has some cowbell in there. I did Deuce from Kiss within the last couple weeks, and this has one little section in there before the guitar solo starts, this little triplet on the cowbell. But yeah, I haven't done the Don't Fear the Reaper or Hair of the Dog or Foolin' by Def Leppard has not appeared yet. I think that has a
cowbell.
I think so. Because I'm not fool, and I think you have that going in there. At any rate, yeah.
I think it was more the singer who's doing that, maybe not so much the drummer. But it's funny when you mentioned Deuce, because that was actually my dad's favorite song from Kiss, and I actually had the privilege of actually seeing them live pre-pandemic when they came out here to Pittsburgh. And that was actually song number 3, but I was kind of worried at first because they were always trying to get the crowd all fired up and everything too. So I'm thinking are we getting introduced right here? I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be wasting footage on my phone here just trying to film this song that's not going to be Deuce, which it turned out to be. So
nice.
It all worked out in the end. So
yeah.
Was that just a song you played for fun, or was that for somebody in particular?
The cover of Deuce?
Yeah.
So one of my best friends, I had played in a band with him for several years. We had toured together, recorded together down in LA. He passed away the end of September last year, and his favorite band was Kiss. And pretty unexpected passing. Took us all by surprise. You know, it was like this phone call you don't want to get. But my wife and I, we hang out with his wife frequently, you know, just being supportive friends. And I had messaged her when it was coming up the end of September. I said, I want to do a drum cover and honor Kurt. And like, what was his favorite Kiss song? And she said, all of them. I said, well, I'm not going to cover all of them. Okay. Can we narrow
one too many for those? Yeah.
Can we narrow the field down? So she sent me like 5 different ones to check out, and then Deuce was on there, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do Deuce. So
okay, that's a good thing you did too. And sorry for your loss. So
no, thank you, appreciate that. Yeah,
it's the best thing you can do too. And that's what I also did with Glory Days, because I had lost somebody who was real close to me too, and it wasn't a phone call; it was actually more of a text message, really, at the same time. But I did that in honor of her memory, so I know what you mean too. So it's a good thing.
Yeah.
All right. So, Fred, we are almost out of time right here, and we're down to the last question right here.
Okay.
So, given what COVID has done and everything, and I guess however bad it affected you and anything else outside, like not being able to tour and maybe do stuff like that, I guess what would be your message of hope to people out there as well as musicians?
Well, I mean, it doesn't even have to be necessarily COVID related, but I think when you're faced with something that, like what COVID did, shut down so many things and really sideswiped everybody's life. When that stuff was happening, I reminded myself every day, like, this is not a permanent thing. You know, initially they said, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. you know, and then it was like, well, this is going to be an extended stay-at-home vacation. But it's easy to let us dive into some dark thoughts and kind of self-pity kind of thing, like, oh, now I can't do this and that and the other. None of this lasts forever. The downtimes, the stuff that sucks, that doesn't last forever. It's really super temporary. So I personally just kind of reminded myself of that constantly. The upside was I spent a lot of time with my kids and my wife, and I took advantage of, squaring away recording equipment and that kind of thing. It was like, well, let's move forward with the stuff that we can do. But as far as like a message of hope, it's just all that the downside stuff is so temporary, and not to lose hope. The sun's going to come up tomorrow.
Yeah. Stay strong on that sort of thing too.
Yeah. And surround yourself with positive people. You can easily get wrapped up in a circle of people complaining, like if I'm complaining about traffic and then this person's complaining about traffic, and then pretty soon you got 5 or 6 people just all
ticked off about something and talk about
just
stupid things.
All this hot air about traffic. I'm like, nothing's going to let's talk about something else. Like surround yourself with people who are where you want to be, And I think that's really important. And check in with your friends,
Absolutely. I'd say otherwise go be a politician, that sort of thing.
Yeah. But, avoid politics.
That too. Avoid politics would be the big thing too. Stick to music.
Yeah.
It's a little less drama too. A little less drama.
Well, I mean, that being said, like the drama thing and so much of us are living out our lives on social media or through social media. And that's just the world we live in. I've gone through and either unfollowed, in some cases unfriended or blocked certain people because I don't want to know what your opinion is of the political culture. I don't care about you complaining about traffic. But so I've gone through and I try to maintain and keep my news feed pretty clean. And so I don't see the news stuff. I know where to find news stuff if I need it. But my news feed is pretty full of all my musician friends and what they're doing and the success that they're having. Of course, my family, my sister lives in Texas and has got a pretty successful horse farm, breeding farm, and it's really cool to watch those things. And I have another sister that's really into fitness and these triathlon things, and like that's the stuff I'm interested in seeing. So keep your news feed clean, people.
Yes, be free of negativity. That's sort of thing.
Yeah. And if you don't have anything positive to say or nice to say, just don't even engage.
Don't waste my time, that sort of thing.
Well, you just can spend an absorbent amount of time like stewing over whatever it is.
Stupid things. We'll
exactly.
We'll just keep it that way. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
You didn't have any brushes with COVID, did you? Were you okay going through that whole dark time there?
Yep, I was fine. Yeah, I everybody is super sensitive to everything. So it was December of 20, and I was working outside, and it's not unusual for me in the late fall and spring to have a sniffle.
Everybody looks at you now.
Have a touch of a cold, and so everybody was kind of panicking around me. They're like, "Oh, go get tested." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I go through this every year." So I did go get tested, and it came back positive. And so I quarantined in my room for a day. And so that next, and I think it was taking like nearly a week to actually find out results to things. And I only had that sniffle for like a day and a half, and maybe I went once or twice. I just sat in the bedroom and watched Netflix or whatever, and then after that I felt fine, but I still stayed away from people, and that was it. That was my experience with it,
I see. Well, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I guess, would be the quote most people would say. I know I kind of thrown out a couple quotes here, but you get the idea too. But it's good to have you along here, buddy. It's good to see that you're also out there doing what you love. And it's good to see you're impacting people's lives too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think any of us can have a positive. Quoting. I don't know where this quote came from, but it was kind of, in essence, saying, be careful of what you say and how you act, because you never know who you're influencing. And I won't claim to be an angel. I've certainly had my moments, but I've had a couple instances where I found out years down the road, I ran across you once at the grocery store and you said this one thing to me and I never forgot it. And that like totally changed what, was on my mind or whatever. So you just never know, So, yeah.
Absolutely too.
All of us are responsible for each other. So,
spoken like a true prodigy. All right. So, Fred, we reached the end of my podcast right here. We've actually talked for a good hour and 30 minutes, actually, with that little blip. Actually, with that little blip from Cliff right there. So, you can go ahead and yell at him for me for ruining the interview there briefly. So,
yeah.
But hope you guys have the best luck going forward. Did you have any shout outs or any last words you want to say?
Well, if you want to follow me on YouTube, that'd be awesome. It's Fredrock Fischer. And my website, fredrockschoolofdrumming.com. And then my personal website is fredrockfisher.com. If you want to follow me on social media and those kind of things, I'm really easy to find. But man, just smile and spin those sticks and whack at the drums.
I say, make drum go boom. That sort of thing.
Yes, exactly.
That gives me an idea. All right.
Yeah.
Maybe sometime we could do a collab down the road, and then we'll go from there, that sort of thing. I'll think of something for us to do.
Yeah,
so.
Perfect, man. I'd love to chat again sometime.
All right. Everyone, my guest today was Fred Fischer, hailing from Boise, Idaho. Make sure you go check him out. Subscribe to his channel if you haven't already. Go hit him and everything else. He's a really cool dude, and this was a damn good interview. So,
thank you, Brian.
All right. Fred, stay safe. Stay tuned, y'all.
All right, buddy.